welcome to the D3D4 Football Podcast with me, your host, James Richards. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another D3D4 Football Podcast. It's been a double week of games. Quite an interesting week if you're a Southend fan. New manager coming in, but not really looking much better on the pitch. In fact, quite woeful on Tuesday night. But there you go, baptism of fire, so to speak, for the ex-Arsenal and Tottenham defender. Going to be interesting to see how he tries to get that team playing going forward. Phil Parkinson, he's experienced already the ups and downs of the Sunderland job. I think that's going to be quite interesting to see where that goes. But big crunch battle at the bottom of League Two yesterday between Stevenage and Morecambe. Plus, of course, the small matter of the Devon derby to have a quick chat about today. That was a surprising result. Not so much the Exeter won, but the manner in which they did it. So we'll have a chat about that and much, much more, as always, on the D3D4 Football Podcast. Chris, you're joining me as always. How's your week been?
Pretty good. We've got 4 points from a possible 6. I scored on Wednesday afternoon. It's all going well in football for now.
It's a positive week in the life of Chris Stringer. Where football's concerned, that is a rarity, as listeners to this podcast will probably know on a regular basis. Right, let's jump in though. Let's jump into League One and let's take a look back at what has been quite an enterprising week. League One. Where to begin? I think the first place you've got to begin is giving a shout out to Bolton Wanderers. They picked up their first win of the season, 2-0 win Tuesday night against Bristol Rovers. I've only just released, it's funny, I only just released today the teams of the week for Tuesday. It's just time got ahead of me and the data wasn't available as readily as it should have been, really. But 2 Bolton players made it, Josh Emmanuel and Daryl Murphy. I think they've got a makings there, Chris, of a good squad. I think, Keith Hill said he loves the challenge and the massive uphill task he's got of trying to get them to stay up. Pretty much sure they won't do it, but nice to get a first win because some of their performances have actually been quite good.
Absolutely, and we saw on Tuesday night the looks of a team that looks like a normal League One team, I think, for the first time. They look settled in how they were playing. Bristol Rovers didn't look great, but Bolton absolutely made the most of it. They got 2 nice goals, and it's just a great way to give the fans a little bit of something. The interesting thing, of course, now will be how can they push on, and I think I understand that they might be coming under a further point deduction for having to cancel games, which would be a bit of a kick in the teeth for them. But for now, I think fantastic to see them get a win.
Yeah, another points deduction. I suppose you could argue it's not really necessary, but if you're going
to kicking them while they're down, really.
Yeah, get it over this season though. I think while you've basically got nothing to lose, because it's going to be a tough ask because it is. Sunderland though, it's been a week in the
typical
life.
Sunderland.
Yeah, Phil Parky. I mean, he got the defeat against Wycombe away, which is not really a surprise. Wycombe doing very, very well at home last weekend, but a 5-0 thumping of Tranmere and then a 1-0 defeat at Shrewsbury this weekend. I have to say though, all that fan negativity about Parky and the football he played on Tuesday night, they played some superb stuff. They were all over Tranmere, scored great goals. You can see what he's trying to do. Sunderland fans starting to feel a little bit more positive. I have to say that the defeat yesterday, they were unlucky. They hit the woodwork maybe 3 or 4 times.
3 times, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and if you know anything about Shrewsbury, they are a very good defensive outfit. They've got some good centre-backs. Their wing-backs play on the counter extremely well. First ever time Shrewsbury have beaten Sunderland, so massive shout-out for that. Because
how many times have they played each other, though?
12, I think.
Really? Is it that many times?
Yeah, about 12 times, I think. So that's their first ever win against the Black Hats, which is a very impressive performance as well. Backs against the wall. Max O'Leary's a fantastic keeper, though. Made some really good saves. And I have to say, Sunderland will feel unlucky. But I guess if you're a Sunderland fan, Chris, this is exactly what they want. They want, if they're going to go and lose a game against a League One opposition, they want to have felt, right, we had a real go at that.
I think so, yeah. And Parkinson's got a job in his hand that he's got to deal with the way that his players work under pressure, because it must be one of the most difficult teams to play for in League One or League Two in terms of the expectations of the fans. You're playing in League One, but you've got a set of fans that a couple of seasons ago were supporting a Premier League side, and they want to see good quality football. So I think if you go into places like Shrewsbury, all right, you're losing, but you're playing good football, it shows a sign there that there's at least something Parkinson can build on. And if you can just settle the mentalities of the players, I think they'll be absolutely fine. And like you said before, I think Parkinson is one of the best managers you can pick for a League One team.
Yeah, he set up with a sort of a 4-2-3-1. Maguire supporting Grigg, McGeady, Watmore.
Grigg finally scored.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, wow.
He did it.
If he can get a tune out of Will Grigg, that would be utterly amazing. Interestingly, he's gone for Lee Burge in goal last couple of games as well.
Yeah.
Maybe thinking McLaughlin was having a bit of a poor run, and I probably agree with that. Looking at the data,
Probably a confidence issue again.
Yeah,
I think there's got to be a lot of players in that team that are struggling with confidence.
You've got to be able to get something out of George Dobson in midfield and Max Power. Those two players. Dobson last year at a poor Walsall team was brilliant. Max Power, excellent player. As we all know, he's had a lot of experience at this level. Luke O'Neill continues at right back, although I put him in the team of the week at central midfield simply because otherwise he would not have been in there because the other right back, I think, scored higher points than him. But deserves his place. He had a wonderful game. Watmore looks like a player that can really push on under Phil Parkinson if he can keep fit. But Shrewsbury did well yesterday against them. If you look at how they set up, they had Edwards, Cummings, and Worley in the starting 11. Cummings has now scored, I think, 4 goals. I think he could be a massive player for them, as is Ollie Norburn. Really love what he's doing. Donald Love, sneaky shout for one of the better signings, I think, of the window for Shrewsbury, because I don't think expectations were that high for him when he came, and he's really proved people wrong. Again, maybe at Sunderland, he playing for a big club, the pressure's much greater. You lose confidence a bit quicker, but he's looked really good since getting back into the team. So, massive shouts to the Shrews. That's a very big win for them. Phil Parkinson, though, I think if he can continue how he has in the last 2 games in terms of attacking intent, Sunderland fans can have probably fairly little to complain about. One set of fans, though, that do have a fair bit to complain about, Chris, are those at Roots Hall.
Yes, particularly after Tuesday night. That was, the first red card is just, I'm not sure what he's doing going in like that. Completely stupid. I thought the second one was maybe a little bit soft. But Doncaster, completely on fire. Southend, have they heard of what a defence is?
I don't know, but with Sol Campbell coming in, you'd expect them to find out fairly soon.
You'd hope so, anyway.
A bit like your game against Mansfield, though, when you've got 9 men, it's almost impossible to, especially if you're a team who are low on confidence, that's always going to get you. But I think, in terms of the way he set up yesterday, although they've gone and got beaten by Ipswich, come on, Ipswich
it's as tough a game you're going to get for your first one. And they've got a real chance to win next week.
Well, exactly. Against an Ipswich team as well, of course, who I watched them on, was it Tuesday against Rotherham? They were poor. So they've got something to prove going into this one against Southend.
Yeah.
And I think Paul Lambert got them really up for the game. And they James Norwood back in the team. No surprises that he's amongst the goals.
A shout out about his celebration as well. The GIF on Twitter.
I didn't see that one.
It was Hulk Hogan this week.
I have to say, some of the GIFs that club's putting out for goal celebrations, brilliant. Really enjoy them. I have to say, though, James Norwood being fit will be quite important for Ipswich going forward, looking at the performances they put in the last couple of weeks. So, but I don't know. I didn't see. I don't know if is it Flynn Downs, the midfielder, who's injured, because I didn't see him play on Tuesday night. I wasn't sure whether he was in the game at Southend yesterday, but they do have Cole Scouse, who's I think probably one of the more underrated players that they've had in the team this season. Obviously, Kane Vincent-Young's been brilliant. Rowe, who was at Lincoln City last season, he's done really well. Yeah, Flynn Downs was in the midfield yesterday, so I think he was a big miss against Rotherham, because he glides past people. He's such a delight to watch, and they've actually got Luke Garbett playing quite well at left back. So Paul Lambert, he must be a bit of a magician to get Garbett doing well as a fullback, because at Oxford he was dreadful, just utterly dreadful. Cox behind Humphreys and Hopper. That's probably their best 3 players, Chris. I'd argue.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still looking for a bit more from Cox, I think. But there's certainly something there that they can work with. I like what Dieng's doing in midfield behind them. He's quite good at sort of breaking up play and spraying a few passes around. There's certainly something there that Sol Campbell can work with attacking wise. The big thing for him is going to be sorting out that defence. That is just a huge task for me. You've got players that don't appear to have confidence and don't appear to be playing with quality either. So I think he needs to spend a real bit of time with them there. He's brought in Andy Cole, who'll work well with the likes of Cox, I think. So there's something to work with, but it needs to start going quickly.
It does indeed. It's all about, I think, with Sol Campbell, you get the feeling it's all about him trying to give the players a bit of a positive mentality. He did that.
I think he's the perfect choice. I think I said a couple of weeks ago, if it wasn't going to be Larson, I think it had to be Sol Campbell.
Yeah, I would. I mean, from my perspective, I would have gone straight for Campbell, and you said, sod it to Larson and that, because you've got a proven guy here who's turned a team around in a relegation battle last season. He's a quality defender in his day, with good contacts in the game. And then you've got Henrik Larsson, who's probably never watched League One until
a bit of a nobody in terms of
I mean, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of the experience he'd bring to a relegation side, I wonder whether that was a bit more about as well, maybe than buying the club eventually, because they were reportedly after the Chairboys. So I don't know. One team we do have to talk about, Chris, this week, and not in a particularly positive way, is MK Dons. 1 goal in the last 8 games, of which they've won none.
Yeah, it's pretty dire. I mean, I think someone said to us on Twitter they were surprised that we'd pipped them to do quite as well as we thought. I mean, I think we said upper mid-table in our preview podcast off the top of my head. And I think that was... I stand by that on the basis of what we saw in the pre-season. They had a strong squad. They did well last season. And they're languishing down in 20th. They're not playing good football. They're, what was it, 1 goal in 8?
Yeah, 1 goal in 8, no wins in 8.
That's horrendous. That is just dreadful.
But let's look at that team. I mean, Agar was up front yesterday, and you look at the side that they've got, and you think, well, the players that they've been able to call upon due to injury have again, like Sam Nombe, what a player he looked like he was going to be. I think, though, there was a massive hole in their recruitment in the pre-season, because if you're going to get rid of Chuks and Ike, whether you wanted to or not, that's beside the point. You've got to find a way of bringing someone in, either on loan or from another club, whatever way you do it, who can replace his presence up front. You don't have to have someone who's necessarily quite as technically good, but they haven't got anyone. I can't see anyone in that squad.
They've not got enough. They've not got enough attacking wise at all. And they're playing 4-5-1.
I mean, has Hiram Boateng? I haven't kept up exactly with the squad, but Hiram Boateng, he was there yesterday. I thought he had a few injury niggles at the start of the season, perhaps didn't get into his rhythm, but he's a good player. Someone I'd expect more from. Kasumu, I think, has been impressive when I've seen him play. He's very impressive in the game against Blackpool, and I thought that was a great performance. But very little going forward, and I think, if you're asking wing-backs this season to really push on, like Britton, Lewington, I mean, I think he played 4 at the back yesterday, but the style that was so successful for them last season, I would urge Tisdale, and who am I to urge him to do anything, to be honest? But,
no, I think you are right. They played a successful style of football last season that was exciting to watch, even if they lost. You were seeing a side that played exciting football, and I don't see that this season. Certainly not in the last 8.
Yeah, don't go away from it too much. Try. If you're on a bad run of form, you've got to battle through this. And I don't know where the goals come from. You've got to try and get Hiram Boateng further forward, because he will score. I think Britain can get some goals, maybe Gilby, I don't know really, but you've got to try and find a way of getting people in and around the box to score the goals. I think I did a graphic a couple of weeks ago about chances created per 90. MK Dons were right down the bottom. Really, a worrying sign. If you're not creating the chances, you're not going to score the goals, and it's evident in their recent run of form. So But stick with Tisdale. Definitely stick with Tisdale.
Oh yeah, he's a top manager.
Yeah, he's a top manager, and I think if anyone has got the calm persona to get a team out of trouble or to get them out of a bad run, and this is the season to do it in League One, to have a bad run, because only 3 go down. So
well, we're doing our best with that in League Two as well.
Yeah, well, green shoots against Walsall. Walsall we'll talk about. Jeez.
Yeah, we'll get on to them.
We will indeed. I don't know. Doncaster, massive shout for those guys because under the radar, difficult summer you could argue, but Kieran Sadie has stepped up another level, and I've been delighted to see that. I think Taylor's looked good. Ben Whiteman is one of the best defensive midfielders in the 3rd tier, if not the best. I think he can take that claim. I mean, he's a very, very strong player. Developed really well. James Coppinger is a great player to have in your team as well.
And a couple of games in hand as well.
Yeah, and that's 7 goals. Those goals they scored, the goal difference could be pretty important.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously their game against Transmere was postponed yesterday, so they didn't get to build, unfortunately, on that win.
And as someone that lives, in Liverpool, so just across the river from Tranmere, I can understand why it was called off.
Yeah, not great weather, eh?
Not the best, no.
No, not at all. Wickham keep going strong, 1-1 draw and a 1-0 win against Rotherham. Bit of a attritional game at the New York Stadium, if Ian Bradley's report is anything to go by. Miller's Jekyll and Hyde performance, really wonderful against Ipswich. Should have had more goals really in that one, and then a 1-0 defeat at home. Peterborough 2, Coventry 2. Peterborough coming off the back of a 4-0 win against Accrington. Fantastic late surge to get a equaliser against Coventry, who I think will, like the manager said, be right up there in the mix come the end of the season. They've had such a sort of solid campaign, a few blips, a little bit of a poor run of form. Bialmu, who I think, am I right in thinking Bialmu came from Sutton? Was it?
Maybe.
He scores great goals anyway. He's the kind of player that will smash in a corker from distance, and he did it a couple of times last season. I was a little bit surprised to not see him play a few more games this season. I think he had that run where he first joined them where he couldn't hit a cow's backside with a banjo. He couldn't score goals at all. But I think he certainly looked worthy of being in there from what I've seen of him in the performances over the last couple of seasons. He's a strong guy, and I think you need a bit of a strong presence at times in this division. So, good to see him come back. Good to see him get a win. I mean, the fact that they beat bloody Fleetwood. I mean, Fleetwood are a hard team to beat, and Coventry go and beat them. They get a point at Peterborough, and it could have been 3. That's a very, very good week for the Sky Blues. That's a very good week, and I think not to play it down at all, but it comes off the back of a little bit of a tricky run for them. And Mark Robbins keeping their feet on the ground, no doubt, but they're currently sitting comfortably in sort of 6th. It's a nice place to be after 15 games, just over a quarter of the season gone.
Biamu was from Sutton, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, I mean, what a player he's turned out to be.
He came through via Mumble Sports, then went to a team that starts with a Y and a Z, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce Sutton, then Coventry. Interesting
career path, and a great example yet again of the recruitment team at Coventry doing their best to pick out gems. Obviously, Gillingham, a draw against Shrewsbury, and then a win against Accrington. That's a 4-point haul from 2 tricky away games for the Gills, so that's a very, very good week for them. I think they'll be happy with that. Portsmouth, a 1-0 win against Lincoln, and then to throw away a 2-goal lead.
I'm worried about them a bit.
Yeah. I mean, throwing away that lead. Well, I think Jackett's going to be a bit under huge pressure after yesterday.
Well, I was just going to say I'm a big fan of Kenny Jackett, but I can't see him staying for much longer at this rate.
Difficult to see, to be honest. Burton got 4 points from the week, so that's not too shabby. Bristol Rovers, obviously, that equalise that point against Pompey makes their week slightly more palatable because they lost to Bolton on Tuesday night, and it wasn't a great performance from them.
Not at all, no.
So that does bring them a little bit of solace. Rochdale, of course, a win against MK Dons, but then Oxford United yesterday absolutely outplayed them. What a run.
Oxford? Where has this come from?
It's just the most balanced team we've had for years. And
it's not at all balanced. It's entirely top heavy, and it's wonderful.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the back line, it's not got much depth. So if we have injuries, we're in big trouble. But, Rob Dickie, Elliot Moore, John Mousinho, as our centre-backs, have all played really well this season. I mean, Dickie's come on leaps and bounds from last season. Brilliant.
Dickie was one I pointed out, wasn't it, against Blackpool.
Ruffles has had a season playing left-back under his belt, and you can tell. And Chris Cadden has made a huge difference. And a shout to Sean Long, who scored a goal yesterday. Sam Long, who scored the goal yesterday. Brilliant. He doesn't score many goals, and that's a sign of a team doing really well when you're...
Plus 14 goal difference.
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean,
it's not fair you being this chipper on a Sunday morning.
We've only conceded 3 goals in our decent run of form, and we've beaten West Ham in the cup, so we've got a big game against Sunderland coming up on.
Show off.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I don't mind showing off now and again when Oxford are doing well. Trust me, as an Oxford fan of, when did I start supporting them? 30 years? Is it something ridiculous? Really? You don't have many moments like this. That's the sad truth of it, really. But really enjoying it at the moment. Great performance again. Tarek Fosu, 7 goals in 7 games in all competitions. What a signing he's been. And on that note, we will have a look at the league table, which is actually quite a pleasurable thing for me to do at the moment. Got Ipswich sitting top, Wycombe second, Peterborough in third, Fleetwood in fourth, Oxford United in fifth. That's amazing. That is, brilliant stuff. Coventry in sixth, Doncaster just outside, Sunderland now in eighth. That's not where I think they'll finish, but they've got some work to do.
Better than it was.
And then obviously at the bottom, Bolton, Southend, and AFC Wimbledon. AFC Wimbledon, though, who appointed Glyn Hodges on a permanent basis, which is probably, I think, a fair choice because he'd done quite well. They've just a point behind MK Dons and Tranmere. Right, let's jump into League Two and have a look what happened at a certain Devon derby.
League Two.
Well, after back-to-back defeats on the road, Chris, Exeter came into this one against the Plymouth side who'd won 2 home games on the bounce, thinking, oh dear, this is going to be a tricky game. And I thought it'd be very close. I was probably edging towards a Plymouth win in my preview, thinking that they'd get some because they've been cranking up the Ryan Lowe ball and looking very, very good. But no, Exeter absolutely bossed it. Right off from the off, they were on the front foot. Nicky Law was superb. Bowman scored yet again. Some really good work from the back line. Didn't really give Plymouth a sniff. Never a penalty in a month of Sundays. That is one of the poorest penalty decisions I've seen.
I watched it about 4 times and I just couldn't see anything.
Well, it's just shoulder to shoulder, isn't it? I mean, it's literally 2 players bouncing off each other's shoulder. You could have, if you're giving that as a penalty, you could easily have given it as a free kick the other way as well. So,
well, exactly.
Really felt sorry for Grant. I think he's actually done very well since he's come on loan from Chelsea, and he looked devastated. But it doesn't really detract too much from the performance because I think Plymouth were just dreadful, and Exeter.
Plymouth fans were coming away saying it's one of the worst performances they've seen in a long, long time, and I did see some raising some concerns with Ryan Lowe.
That's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I mean, yes, it's a poor result, but nah. Do me a favour. Ryan Lowe's a brilliant manager. Talks so well. Very calm as well after the defeat because
he speaks so well. He clearly knows his football really, really well. He talks with such tactical know-how. I think he knows clearly what's gone wrong and how he needs to go about rectifying it.
Absolutely. I mean, and when he plays the style of football he does, he knows, and fans will know from Bury that he's going to concede goals. They always do, but it depends. You can have a manager who plays turgid stuff and gets sort of the odd result, or you can have Ryan Lowe who will always be attacking and always go for it. And yes, you get the odd 4-0 to Exeter, which is very hard to take because it's a derby game, of course. But you've just come off the back of a 4-0 win against Leyton Orient with the funniest non-handball decision I've ever seen.
But Brian Lowe was on the highlight show, wasn't he, midweek, just saying, it's clearly handball. It's just.
It was just that was. How did anyone not? How the refs didn't see it? It was. If you haven't seen it, have a look. Zach Rudden in the first goal against Leyton Orient. He literally, the hand is. You talk about unnatural position.
It's not even like he's jumped strange. Yeah, he's thoroughly gone for it with his hand.
Yeah, ridiculous. It's not even like the old Maradona hand on top of the head subtlety here. This is hand at a sort of right angle, thumping it towards
I
goal.
respect the boldness of that.
Yeah, maybe it's so blatant, the rest just won't believe they've just seen that. So
yeah, exactly. You can't. It's just hide in plain sight.
But anyone who suggests Rhino should go, for me, is crazy. I think
Me
there's been
too.
signs of I mean, all the data shows that Plymouth are one of the sides that will improve the most based on their current results. We saw it in the last couple of games as well. Come on, some really good performances being put in, and it's difficult when your side's not winning. But they beat Carlisle, they've beaten Leyton Orient, 2 clean sheets in a row, and then to lose to Exeter like that was, I get it, thoroughly disappointing, but certainly no need to panic just yet. Chris, one of the biggest games in Colchester and Crawley's history takes place on Tuesday night. I will be there to watch that one. I've been kindly invited by one of the directors at Crawley to join him, so going to go and have a watch and,
You're in with the big wigs, aren't you?
Yeah, the bigwigs indeed. I mean, the funny thing is as well that they've drawn each other, so at least one League Two side will be joyous at the final whistle, and being a neutral, and knowing obviously people at both clubs, it's going to be a fascinating watch. And I don't know, what do you think, Chris? Coming in off the back of a 4-0 defeat to Swindon, Colchester coming off a very fine performance against Newport. Do you think that form book has any relation to what we're seeing, or will it not matter?
There was a rule of thumb that my dad used to say to me. If you've got a team struggling in the league, the cup run will provide a really good distraction from the league, and it'll take pressure off them in the league. And if you've got a team going for promotion, it'll distract them in the league. And I think if you can sort of reverse that around somehow in the logic, I think that'll work in Crawley's benefit. They're the ones slightly more struggling in the form a bit. Colchester, all right, not having the best run of form, but they've won in the league. I would actually be starting to think maybe this is the distraction Crawley need, and the distraction Colchester maybe don't want. I mean, I'm sure they do want it in terms of having a cup run. Yeah, but I mean, in terms of their league performance, it might not be the best for them.
I think Crawley, what is it? 1 win in 8 now.
Yeah.
And I think the most disappointing result within that group of fixtures has to be the result against Walsall. But actually, looking at that group of fixtures, apart from the Walsall game, I would say to Crawley fans, stay positive here, because you've drawn with Plymouth, top team at this level. Northampton are proving what they're going to be. You've got a draw at Sixfields. Poor defeat to Walsall, no doubt about that. But you've gone to Forest Green and you've got beaten. Forest Green, top side this season. You beat Colchester, a really good second half rally in that. You've gone to Bradford and deserved a point. You've drawn at Newport, who are I think they have the best home form this season. And then obviously, yes, a really poor performance yesterday against Swindon, who, again, we know what Swindon can be on their day. So, John McGreal, actually, the Colchester manager, described Swindon as the best team in the division. So
I think that's fair, to be honest, at the moment.
Well, on their day, I think they are the best team in the division. I don't think they are generally. I think, the table doesn't lie. Crewe and Exeter are more consistent and generally a better side. I think Cheltenham have the most organised systems that you can play, and they look very, very good. But I would say to Crawley fans, keep positive, because they've had a few injuries as well of late. When Ollie Palmer's not been available for selection, Ashley Naderson has not even got going yet, and he was a fanfare signing this summer, but he's just had injury problems, and it's been a very frustrating time for him. I'd be slightly concerned with the way they conceded the goals yesterday, but cup football is completely different. Colchester, though, fair play to them. They've sort of been on an up and down run. I think it's difficult to put your finger on why they can't find a little bit more consistency at times. Back-to-back defeats, obviously against Crawley and then Morecambe. A good point at Crewe, which could have been so much more, in one of the most bizarre sequences of events at the end of a football match I've probably ever seen. So if you haven't seen it, Nicky Hunt off the ball tangled with Theo Robinson. The ref sent off Robinson and gave a penalty to Colchester.
Obviously.
I don't know. Maybe he was fouled and then reacted. I think that's the only thing that can be said. But it was a save by Askelainen, and Crew survived, and then Colchester beat Newport, who, I watched Newport play against Swindon earlier this season, and they absolutely bossed that game against, like we just said, a very good Swindon side. So a great result for Colchester, and Tuesday night will be absolutely fascinating.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be.
I'm jealous that you're going.
Yeah, it was a big swing actually, because Oxford obviously playing Sunderland, and that I'll be keeping such a close eye on that. But it's kind of getting an invite to Crawley, and I think the draw of this one for me as well is it's a League Two side. It's going to be one of these League Two sides, 4th Division club, are going to be into the last 8 of the EFL Trophy. So,
were Bradford the last time to do that? Were they League Two when they went on their remarkable cup run?
Quite possibly. But fantastic stuff. History in the making. Carlisle, history in the making. Not really. I don't know where Stephen Presley.
Sorry, Carlisle fans, that was a little bit savage there.
Well, I don't know where Stephen Presley lies in like management history sort of league table at Carlisle, but let's be honest, he came in when they were 4th, subsequently took them out of the playoff places, and this season, with the summer under his belt, he's taken them to sort of, was it 4th from bottom, something like 5th from bottom, something like that. I mean, it's not been good. And there are underlying issues there at the club, in terms of, you talk about how they back them. Nigel Clibbens, their chairman, is very, very adamant that he will not put the club at risk by chasing, I suppose, like on the pitch success financially. He does not want to put them in any position of risk. Stephen Presley obviously frustrated. A few agents I spoke to were suggesting that he was very frustrated with the recruitment he got done over the summer. It was very slow, and he had a very small squad going into the latter part of the summer. But doesn't hide from the fact, Chris, that the results have been poor. A draw yesterday sort of stops the slide of 4 straight defeats. But if you go back a couple of further games, they only won 1 in the last, was it 7 or something, 8 games? Not good. Not good for a side that, have always been on the cusp of the playoffs in the last few campaigns.
It's not good at all. I follow a couple of Carlisle fans, and they all seem really unhappy. They don't appear to be playing particularly good football, and they're losing in poor style, as you've touched on. All right, the last four games that they've lost before this one were tough games, but the nature of the performance isn't there. And it was something that I raised with you when Presley got the job. I mean, I will joke on that, with you, but it's a real concern. He was linked with the Oldham job, and his historic form isn't good enough. He was given the Carlisle job. He took them out of the playoffs, and now they're struggling towards the bottom half of the table, and they're fortunate, like Oldham, that only 1 goes down this season, but it's precarious for them. They need to start winning, and I think Preston needs to show something in his next 4 games to really prove that he's got enough to keep the job, I think.
Absolutely right. Next 4 games, Macclesfield at home, Port Vale away. That's going to be tough. Port Vale unbeaten there. Cambridge at home, Morecambe away. If you can't get 6 points minimum from those games, you're in big trouble, I think. And the fact is that, they don't score goals. They've got one of the worst attacking ratios for goals, I think, in the division. I thought they've scored 16, something like that. Is it like fourth worst, joint 4th worst, or something like that? Really not good at all. And they also, chances created per 90 minutes, I think only Morecambe are worse than them. That's how bad it is. Yeah,
it's terrible. It's just terrible.
You look at the fact that Walsall are playing poorly, and we'll talk about them in a minute. Stevenage have got players back and are picking up a few results. Scunthorpe are nowhere near as bad as their league position suggests. If you look at the data, XG is much better than that. Their chances created is much better than that. So, yeah, I think Carlisle are in big trouble. An ex-Carlisle manager in Keith Curl revisited the place. He did mention, actually, funny enough, that the atmosphere had changed at Brunton Park since he was last there. But focusing a little bit on Northampton, they've been picking up some decent results. Finally starting to click. 3 2-0 wins on the bounce. Very impressive. 3 clean sheets. And I think also the Scunthorpe result really it can sharpen minds when you get beaten badly, and it looks like it's done the trick. I mean, they've got a few players that haven't been able to feature so much. McCormack, the big one, he's got injured, I think, on the opening day of the season. He has hardly featured at all, and he's a good player at this level. It's starting to click a bit for them. I mean, in terms of the way he's setting them up, Chris, we know Keith Curle likes a bit of the sort of wing-back system, isn't it? The sort of 3-5-2. But he's come away from that quite regularly this season, and he's playing more of a sort of a 4-2-3-1, and it's worked really well. Billy Waters back in the team, impressing. Hoskins, his production has been better this season as well. I think Williams has done very well, actually, to keep people like Harry Smith and Verdane Oliver out of the side when they're playing one up front. Nicky Adams is so versatile. Obviously, he played right wing back with Bury last season. He's back to his sort of left-sided attacking position where he was so dangerous and good in his Carlisle days. So Pollock has done well, and so has McWilliams. And in fact, Keith Curle gave a shout out to their under 18s coach or under 23s coach who's done such a good job with some of these young players. And at the back, when you've got like Charlie Good in such good form and Turnbull as well, they could be a really big presence in the second half of the campaign.
I think so, and actually I think he returned to a wing-back system yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And I like to see that, actually. I like to see that a team's is versatile in its formation. It shows its ability to adapt to whatever team they're coming up against. And all right, Cambridge haven't been the strongest of outfits, but they've confidently come away with a win. They've shown what they're about. And as you say, they've won 3 on the bounce. Now Keith Curle showing once again that he is a very, very capable manager. And it puts them right into that mix of a playoff spot, which is, Northampton for me should be around there. They should be teetering between League 2 and League 1, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think, historically, and if you look at the crowd, I mean, it's a poor way of judging a team, but it does give some idea of the sort of size. They had 5,000 in attendance yesterday. And you're right, yeah, they went with the wing-backs again yesterday with Nick Adams as the left wing-back. Paul Anderson joined them, obviously ex-Notts Forest player. He played as a right wing-back with Smith and Hoskins up front. I mean, lovely versatility in there. And you've got Pollock and McWilliams in with McCormack, who came back into the side yesterday. I think there's a lot to like about this team because, when you have, I think having McCormack and Chris Lyons in the same team, you lack perhaps a little bit of mobility. But if you've got young players like McWilliams and Pollock playing alongside one of the more experienced guys, you've got a lovely sort of balance, a bit of mix in there. And Wharton is a good defender as well. So, yeah, a lot to like about Northampton. Cambridge, they've had I have to say, to be fair to them, they have had some pretty big injury problems this season. It's been hard for them to get a consistent team. I think George Maris missed out because of an ankle or foot injury which he picked up. They've been without Greg Taylor through illness, and he's quite an important defender for them. They've been without some pretty key players, and obviously, they were struggling to score goals at home, and they've got 0-0 against Grimsby and then lost here, so not a great week for them. Mansfield, they've done okay. They'll be happy with the way that they're slowly getting into it. I thought they were very, very unlucky to lose to Salford, but they did pick up, obviously, a very important win, probably a deserved win against Walsall at the weekend. So
they're returning to type, Mansfield.
They're getting there. And I think, Carl, a Mansfield fan who always gives me updates, I think he's quite pleased with what he's seeing. I mean, some of the injuries, Danny Rose's injury is not looking as bad as it was first thought. But if you've got Andy Cook and Nicky Maynard up front, in this division, Chris, they're a fantastic pair to have up top.
Absolutely, they've got a superb team. There's no getting around that. They had their blip at the start of the season, and we said at the start of the season, where is this coming from? This is outrageous that they're down there. They're showing that they've got the quality in the team, and they're showing that, they're now getting towards that sort of promotion form that they should be having. Maynard, he's finally started to pull up plants, and they've just got a cracking team.
Indeed, and I think as well, if you want a blip, have it at the start of the season so you can motor on.
Exactly, yeah. Don't do a Peterborough.
Yeah, well, or a Flipcroft. Yeah, where he's
yes.
struggling to get over the line, didn't he? So, Cheltenham, fantastic performance midweek, 3-0 win against Macclesfield. Obviously, the Silkmen will be disappointed with themselves for that performance, because I think they've been pretty solid this season. You don't see them concede any goals, but the game against Bradford yesterday was called off. So all those hordes of Bradford fans looking to go to Moss Rose will have been left bitterly disappointed. Scunthorpe, fantastic week for them. They've started to improve hugely. A 3-1 win against Exeter was really well deserved. I think Van Veen and Ward are a good pair. Ward playing sort of on the left, actually. I thought he'd be brought in as a striker, but he's looked really good on the left in a 4-4-2. So that's something to be happy about. I think Levi Sutton's an important player. When he came on into the midfield, I enjoyed his performance. I think he can add some energy. They've looked a little bit lacklustre at times this season, Scunthorpe, but beating Exeter 3-1 is no mean feat. And then obviously a 1-1 draw. Bit gutting that you're the player that's on loan at the other club comes back to score against you. I mean, that was a bit of a...
Is that a mistaken paperwork or something?
Yeah, a bit of a boo-boo there from someone in the paperwork department. But
I remember that happening against Oldham many years ago when we had Michael Ricketts signed for us. He was dreadful, so we sent him on loan to Walsall. Came back a couple of weeks later, someone didn't fill in the paperwork and he scored twice.
Oh dear, yes, gutting when that happens, I'm sure. Absolutely, you'd be like, what were you thinking? I mean, I think Owen Doyle, someone was quite clever at Bradford to make sure that there's a clause when they played recently that he couldn't play in that. But
yes.
What a performance from them yesterday, and Owen Doyle again, Chris. I know it makes you cry as an Oldham fan, but
so much. I miss him so much.
Was it 13 goals now for him?
I miss him so much. He's a cracking player. He showed it at Oldham. He had his little injury and went away, but he plays well under Welland's style of football. They obviously try and play a fluid style, and Owen Doyle is just a fox in the box. As soon as it gets in there, he finishes. You give him a close range chance, and he's not going to miss it.
Yeah, exactly. He scored
that's
like
how they're setting
50%.
up.
Yeah, he scored like 50% of their goals as well. 13 of the 26 they've scored have been scored by him.
It's outrageous. It's just outrageous.
Bradford fans were thinking, why did we let him go? But I mean, I suppose when you saw how he played for Bradford last season, he was pretty poor.
Everyone in that Bradford team.
Yeah, speaking of Bradford, I mean, their game was cancelled yesterday, but they lost on Tuesday night to Port Vale. A fantastic performance from Port Vale, and then Oldham go there. Zeus had a good game, Chris.
Zeus is superb. I love him. Gary Woods had looked a bit shaky of recent weeks, and he picked up a knock a couple of weeks ago. Zeus came in, and he's playing superb stuff. I feel a little bit for Gregor Zabret that we brought in on loan from Swansea, I think it was, because he's nowhere near the first team at the moment. But I love Kurosawa. Zeus de la Paz is great. Nefe Machina was great until we decided to ship him off to Chesterfield. It's great. What a footballing nation.
Yeah, they have got some characteristic players, haven't they? Some players that do very well.
I think they got to the semi-final of the America's Cup, so
did very well. And you guys, importantly, 4 points from a week where
we needed them. We needed them. I mean, that Walsall game on Tuesday night, that was the big one for us. And I actually went out for my friend's birthday. So I had my phone switched off and turned it on about end of the game, so like 10 o'clock, and I went, how many drinks have I had? Where's this come from?
Akaviti set up. I mean, it was a lovely,
When did he turn into Marcelo?
Oh, wonderful performance from him, yeah. I think what I noticed about Akaviti as well, and maybe this is something Dino's getting him doing, is that he was just marauding forward at every opportunity. He's got like these sort of telescopic legs, and he kept going forward and making these strides, and then he did that lovely little bit of skill to set up Wilson's goal. Zankpo scored as well, so
I think Wilson getting a goal in particular will do wonders for his confidence. I still think we need to be playing him alongside a bigger striker, but him and Zankpo are playing together now, and Wilson finally getting on the score sheet. I think that'll do him a world of good. Yeah,
I think so. A good point at Port Vale, like we said, who have not lost at home this season.
So I think they've got an average point per game at home of 2.14 or something.
Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all. Big game at the bottom yesterday, Chris. Is this the end for Jim Bentley? They lost 1-0 to Stevenage. Big credit to Stevenage, though, because this is a huge game for them. And traditionally, Morecambe win against teams down at the bottom, don't they?
Well, there's reports coming out that he's set to step down and take over AFC Fylde.
He deserves a league job. I'm sorry, he deserves a league job. I mean,
you say that, he probably does, but Fylde's an interesting one. It keeps him. It means he don't have to move house because it's like round the corner from Morecambe. But it's a team with a lot of potential. They're growing as a club. They've got a good budget. There's a lot of potential in that team. So I won't say it's a dreadful move for him.
No, I'm not saying dreadful. I just think
It's
after
just a shame to
what
see
he's
him
done
leave.
at Morecambe, you know.
It's a shame to see him leave Morecambe, but it's one of those where there's a good opportunity for him. Morecambe are struggling in the league and perhaps need some new energy maybe. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not sure they'll find anyone better than Jim Bentley at that club. Let's face it, they've been kept in the league for the last 4 years when really they probably should have gone down.
Yeah, he's done a remarkable job. The longevity, what a legend he was as a player. I watched him play as a player for Morecambe on several occasions. Do you reckon Kevin Ellison could become the next manager? No one knows the club better. It would be a good transition for him.
How long's he been there? 12 years?
Yeah, I don't know, long time.
It's a long time. He's been on this podcast a few times, and he clearly knows his football well and talks well. He's got a good energy about him. You see that in how he winds up away fans. So why not? I mean, I'd certainly like to see him given the caretaker job if Bentley does go indeed, and work from there. I say.
Well done, Stevenage.
If he wants it.
Well, indeed, if he wants it, yeah. But well done, Stevenage. Mark Sampson doing well. I mean, they had Bastion in goal because, Farman was suspended, I think, for 5 bookings. That's impressive for a goalkeeper at this early stage of the season.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. He was out suspended. He got booked in the midweek game. I think it was against Swindon. So that was his 5th booking of the season. So, yeah, he missed out on this one. I think they've got a nice strike partnership with Cowley and Guthrie. I do like that. Having Dean Parrott come back into the team, I think he's a very good, technically able player. And they obviously had no Luther Wilden. He was out, but Van Kooten's come back into the side. Van Kooten is a player to watch, and then some. I think if you know a lot about him, he could become their next big sale, probably. He looks excellent. And obviously having Nugent and Cuthbert back in the centre back positions. Obviously they played 3 at the back yesterday. Stokes as well, very experienced trio. Nugent is sort of the most mobile, and I'd say potentially one of their best centre backs going forward. But Scott Cuthbert, huge experience, great player, great professional, and a very good victory for Stevenage. And they're very unlucky actually against Swindon. They put in a decent away performance, and to concede late on in that one was a bit gutting for them. But Leyton Orient 1-1 draw with Carlisle. As I say, that's a probably a disappointing result in terms of they would be hoping to win at home against them, especially after being drubbed by Plymouth, albeit in slightly controversial circumstances. But I don't think that Carl Fletcher will have much complaint about that result at all.
The result itself was fair. It was just that one goal that was a bit more than controversial. Yeah,
indeed. I mean, and Newport have had a poor week by their standards, drawing when they should have probably beaten Crawley for sure. I mean, they had some really good scrambles at the end, and I can't believe they didn't put the ball in there. But then to lose to Colchester, they'll be disappointed with that. But they've had a great season so far, and if any team doesn't let themselves get too down by a defeat, it's Newport. Mike Flynn keeps them very level-headed. Even when they're on good runs, he keeps them level-headed. So, fair play to them. And obviously, Forest Green, their game was cancelled yesterday, but they got a 2-0 win at Morecambe. Long trip up there on a Tuesday night, and a good result for Mark Cooper's men. Mark Cooper, one of the managers I admire the most. I think he's done a great job there. But let's talk and end this podcast with a chat about Walsall, because I've watched them several times this season. And at no point, I think, even when they beat Crawley, have I been impressed with them. I think this is a team, Chris, in a bit of trouble. A defeat yesterday to Mansfield. They lack creativity. They lack goal-scoring threat. They've got, I think, not very much mobility in that team. And they've got Darryl Clark suggesting in a rant he went on after the game in midweek against Oldham, where he was saying, I've transfer list of players, I'll even get rid of players that I've already brought in this summer.
Yeah, what was the phrase he said? They need to step up and start playing, or go and stack shelves for a living.
Yeah, he's getting quite vocal in his
that
happiness with his players.
I don't think that can sometimes work and provoke a response, but when it's consistent, I think all you do is you destroy the last semblance of morale in that squad. And that sounds like a manager that's coming under a lot of pressure.
I would stick with him, though.
Maybe, But I mean, that's 5 losses on the bounce. It's something needs to change at Walsall.
Well, it's the squad. I have to say, if you look at the squad, like we talk about balance in a squad, they've probably got one of the least balanced squads I've seen. You know, he likes to play wing backs, and I don't see how he can necessarily, because Cameron Norman, not necessarily a right wing back at all, seeing him play for Oxford. And although, yeah, he did really well, I think it was for Kings Lynn, got loads of goals and assists. I mean, it's a different level coming up to this interleague football, so difficult. I mean, they've got Cockrell and Mollett on the left that they can play there. They've actually had Zach Jules playing as a left back in recent weeks, who has always traditionally been more of a centre back. Corey Roberts back in the side. Obviously, Matt Sadler's bizarre, deliberate handball against Oldham saw him walk. But they don't have any creativity or natural width on the wing either. I mean, yesterday they had Kinsella left wing, Holden right wing. I mean,
surely some of this is on Clark though. He must have been involved in the recruitment.
I think one of their better players is McDonald. Again, though, he's a typical low league winger. He'll do some great stuff one game and just completely drift out of it. The next you've got Guthrie, obviously a very technically good midfielder, played at a higher level, but you know he's at that age now where he gets a lot of injuries and won't play much. And in your 3 strikers of Gaffney, Josh Gordon, and Adebayo, well, none of them are natural goal scorers.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say they're as close to having to get rid of their manager as I think Carlisle are, but I think you've got to be looking towards the next 5-10 games, maybe 5 probably, with Walsall, and start to really ask questions, because they've got to turn this around. They're fortunate that only one goes down, but Tuesday night was their chance to prove it. They were going up against an Oldham side that has as little confidence as any side in this league, and they capitulated completely. You had a defender, giving away a free kick and being sent off in a manner that is bizarre. It's a lack of discipline, lack of common sense, lack of anything really. They've
had several games as well where they've had individual errors cost them massively. At Leyton Orient they were doing quite well, and then there's a mistake that led to the goal, and the whole game changed. And it's happened on several occasions this season. They were poor against Salford, right? Really, really poor against Salford. And we said in our pre-season preview pod that we thought Walsall and Scunthorpe would struggle. We got quite a lot of stick for that.
Yeah.
And yet we sit here after 15 games and both of them are sitting, third and fourth from bottom respectively. And I didn't think they'd do this badly, if I'm honest. I thought it would be a struggle and it would be a sort of mid-table finish for Walsall. But, Bates has looked quite good. He can play a bit deeper and he can play some smart balls. But they need, for me, if they go into the January transfer window, the first thing they need to do is get in a striker. And the second thing they need to do is get in a bloody pair of wingers. If they're going to play 4-4-2, it depends what he plays. He's changed formation so often. I don't think he knows his best team. I don't think he knows the formation that will get the best out of this group of players. And I think it's a sign of the players not being great quality. Slow, lacking mobility, lacking creativity. How are you going to, in this division, you need to have some of those players that can create something, or you're going to struggle. And yeah, I don't see it, Chris. Big task in January then.
Huge task. It's the same with Oldham. You've got to sign players, but I think the big difference is Clark has been there since summer and was involved in that recruitment. If you're the I don't know the exact arrangements around Walsall's recruitment policy, and I might be being completely harsh on Darryl Clark when he's not had so much of a say in recruitment. But if it is the case that he's signing some of these players, do you trust him as an owner to go in and sign new players?
I think you're spot on with he's involved in the recruitment, because Rory Gaffney, Sinclair, James Clark, they're all Clark players, aren't they?
Exactly.
From Bristol Rovers. Essentially, Gaffney obviously on loan from Salford, but was at Rovers with Clark. So, yeah, big worries. Sadler's fans, get in touch with us. Love to hear what you're thinking. I generally think a lot of you would agree with our comments. Something needs to change. 4,500 turned up to watch them play Mansfield yesterday, about 800 from Mansfield. And that's always going to be a difficult game. Cook, typical wind-up merchant when he scored against his old team. But what a player he was to lose as well. I think they could have done with him, but it's not good for the Saddlers at the moment. And Darryl Clark's frustration with his players is becoming very apparent. But let's look at the league table. We've got Crewe sitting top, despite not playing yesterday. Exeter second, Cheltenham third. Forest Green, Swindon, Bradford and Newport making up the top 7. And apart from Cheltenham in there, I'm not really surprised at that top 7 at all. I think Cheltenham were the one team that we probably didn't see, and even Luke, who was with us on the pre-season pod, didn't quite see them doing that well.
I think we said 10th or 11th for them.
Yeah, so that's a brilliant, what a start they've had, and they were excellent on Tuesday night again. And our good friend of the pod, Charlie Raglan, in the team of the week for Tuesday night, which I belatedly released today, but it's good to see him doing well. Northampton and Colchester outside the top 7 as it stands, as are Plymouth. Port Vale, steady season of improvement this year is what they need. New owners coming in, it's going to be a bit of a slow turnaround, I think.
And Vale Park is a fortress.
Yeah, it's good. That's what they need. Massive pitch as well. Always huge. The Wembley of the North.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, that's what it was called. It's built. I mean, you got Morecambe, obviously now rock bottom. Stevenage second bottom, with Scunthorpe, Walsall, Carlisle, and then Oldham just
We're up to
outside.
19th.
Up to 19th, climbing that slowly. Crawley 17th, but I think that will improve if what I've seen of them is anything to go by. Right, guys, thank you for listening to the pod. Chris, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, pleasure.
And we'll be back next week for another pod. And if you haven't already, check out Gabe Sutton's podcast, his interview with Andy Holt. But until next week, it's goodbye.